Last week, Gary Johnson received the Libertarian nomination, meaning that he will represent the third largest political party in the United States this November. Now, of course, that's a lot like being the third most important cast member of Key and Peele or making the third best Ace Ventura movie, but still, he will be on the ballot this November, and the two major party nominees are leaving a lot to be desired for people of a certain ideology. So, this one goes out to all the liberty-loving, limited government touting, laissez-fairies out there. So, you want to vote for Gary Johnson. Howdy gang, there's a lot of talk about Gary Johnson right now. He recently received the Libertarian nomination during a time period when people are desperately searching for a presidential alternative. In fact, in a recent Monmouth University poll, he managed to get 11% of the vote against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. That's a huge jump from the 1% of the vote that he got in 2012 as a Libertarian nominee. But how strong is that support really? Well, if you look at his favorability ratings, only 15% of Americans view Johnson unfavorably, according to that Monmouth poll. But 76% of them don't know enough about him to form an opinion at all. That means just 9% of Americans have a favorable opinion of Gary Johnson, and yet 11% said they would vote for him. That means that 2% of the people in that poll are so disgusted with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump that they looked at their alternative and were like, well, I don't know who that guy is, but f*** it, I'll take my chances. It's almost as if anyone could fill that void, even someone as ridiculous as...
He's nuts. Yep, you heard me right. He is gaining traction in North Carolina with 9% of voters saying they'd vote for him. Wow. In a hypothetical race between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, he would get 9%.
So there you go. Whether America wants to provide support for D's nuts or is feeling the Johnson, either way it's an arbitrary choice based on dislike of the other two candidates. If Gary Johnson is going to make a real impact this fall, he's going to have to prove that he is a good candidate in and of himself. Luckily though, he does have the respectability, grandeur, and prestige of the Libertarian Party behind him.
It was the live broadcast no one expected to see on C-SPAN. Now a viral sensation, a man stripping down in the middle of the National Libertarian Party convention last Sunday in Orlando.
The political system is so corrupt that it needs to be stripped down to nothing.
That's why you took your clothes off?
That's why I took my clothes off.
Look, say what you want about the Republicans, but this is a party that does not have it together right now. Although I suppose with everything else that's happened, I wouldn't be too surprised by a Mike Huckabee striptease at the Republican National Convention, nor a gravy t-shirt contest. But Gary Johnson really shouldn't be judged based on the Libertarian Party. He's his own man with his own record. In fact, he was the Republican governor of New Mexico, a fairly blue state, from 1994 to 2002. Since then, he's been accused of being too liberal for Republicans, but too establishment for Libertarians. But let's see how he frames his own record.
As governor, I was labeled the most dangerous politician in America.
Right. Somehow I feel like the most dangerous politician in America would be a little more menacing and a little less sassy. But okay, fine. How do the people of New Mexico feel about Gobernador Peligroso?
In a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat, me being a fiscal hawk, people in New Mexico today wave at me with all 5 fingers, not just one.
Okay, ignoring the tepid smattering of claps and Gary Johnson laughing at his own joke, was it really that unusual, the situation he just described? Was Gary Johnson used to just wandering around New Mexico and people flipping him the bird instead of waving at him? You know, it's really incredible. When people see me on the streets today, they say hello instead of "Fuck you, Gary, I hope you die immediately." Also, is it just me or is Gary Johnson constantly moving at exactly 90% speed? It seems like his sentences are structurally sound, but there's something just a little bit off that makes him seem more robot than human. Anyway, ignoring the pleasantries and the weird jokes, let's move on to how Gary Johnson frames his record as governor of New Mexico.
I'm a competitive athlete. I've done hundreds of athletic competitions. I still compete in skiing, mountain biking, and road biking competitions. I've done Ironman Hawaii 4 times. I've done the Leadville 100-mile run. I'm a pilot.
Gary, why are you bringing all this shit up? Does the resume for president have a special skills section? Is Gary Johnson really running for president, or is he just seeking employment of any kind? Could this get any stranger?
I'm a gas balloonist.
See, even Gary Johnson doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You know what? Maybe let's not focus on this speech right now. Maybe he was having an off day. Maybe he consumed one of those illicit substances he wants to legalize so badly. Instead of listening to him talk about a gas balloon, let's hear what happens when he's asked about a gas balloon.
Are you ready for Donald Trump, once you're in this thing and he recognizes you, to give you a big punch in the nose for calling him a racist?
I think that they've already started coming. So, Donald.
That's an interesting rebuttal you have there, Governor. I don't know how it's going to go over.
Yeah, that is an interesting rebuttal. You know what, guys? I'm ready to call it. Gary Johnson is a Class A weirdo. And I know that's a shallow judgment, and I know that commenting on a candidate's personality lowers the discourse, but ladies and gentlemen, the discourse has already been lowered. And you can bet that if Gary Johnson starts to be a threat to Donald Trump by splitting the vote, he too will get a career-destroying nickname. It happened to Little Marco, it happened to Lion Ted, and let me tell you, it will happen to Limp Johnson. Sad.
Losers.
On the other hand, if you're thinking about voting third party, then you already aren't going to vote for Donald Trump. Or Hillary Clinton, for that matter. The voters that Gary Johnson is trying to court right now are the disaffected Republicans, right? Your Jeb Bushes, your Rand Pauls, basically everyone that Donald Trump beat up for their lunch money. And he should have no problem getting those voters. Their options are basically a Democrat, a former Democrat turned fascist, and a former Republican. But Gary Johnson is also trying to court a different set of voters who may be a harder sell.
Here's a pitch to make to everybody out there, which is the website isidewith.com. It's really simple, 60 questions, you don't have to register, but at the end of that quiz, you get paired up with the presidential candidate most in line with your views. Interestingly, of all the presidential candidates, I next side with Bernie Sanders at 73%.
Alright, first of all, the fact that Gary Johnson has time to take the I Side With quiz while running for president is very telling. It's only 60 questions. I did it while waiting for Bill Kristol to return my phone calls. Additionally, while Bernie Sanders and Gary Johnson may seem similar on the surface, they're both laissez-faire about social issues, they're both dovish on foreign policy, they could not be more different when it comes to economic policy. And as I recall, economic policy was just a little bit important to the Bernie Sanders campaign. You know, a little bit important to his appeal. Who was it that he said caused all of our problems again? Was it the Fred Astaire's and Chameleonaires? Or the Questionnaires and Grizzly Bears? I just can't remember.
Millionaires and billionaires. Millionaires and billionaires.
Millionaires and billionaires.
Millionaires and billionaires.
Millionaire and billionaire.
Millionaires and billionaires. Millionaires and billionaires at the same time.
Bernie Sanders is the epitome of a big government liberal. Like him or not, agree with his policies or not, that's what he is. So how does Gary Johnson reconcile this with his little to no government philosophy?
Look, libertarians agree with socialism as long as it's voluntary. But when it's forced, that's tyranny.
So Bernie Sanders wants equality to be governed by the government, and Gary Johnson wants equality to be governed by the honor system. Basically, Gary Johnson wants the American people to be protected with just as much regulation as a masturbation contest. Which sounds nice in theory, but then you're always going to have capitalist pigs like George Costanza taking advantage of the system.
I tell you, if I was running for office, I would ask for the death penalty for double parkers. If this is allowed to go on, this is not a society. This is anarchy!
Sorry, Jerry, the invisible hand of the free market has decided that you no get iPad. Anyway, Gary Johnson takes a little bit from the Republican platform and a little bit from the Democratic platform. And depending on your ideology, this may be the best of both worlds, like peanut butter and jelly, or an unsavory mix, like I can't believe it's not butter and Nelly. But either way, Gary Johnson is not like any of the other candidates running right now. And that's great if you hate Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and even better if you like unsolicited balloon facts and finger jokes. But if you're a disaffected Bernie supporter or a social conservative who can't support Donald Trump because he's unqualified, then Gary Johnson may well seem like he's full of hot air himself. But hey, even if this president thing doesn't work out for him, we do know of at least one line of employment that will welcome him with open arms. If you like this video, please support the anarchist meritocracy that is YouTube and subscribe.